Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Kahn, and this is Investing with Adam K. I hope everybody's doing well, having a great Tuesday. Maybe we'll get a few people to join. I see a couple of you are here already. I really do like the live platform, it's pretty cool. And now that I'm indoors, anybody who has any questions and wants me to actually look up a stock, it's pretty easy for me to do over here because I got my computer next to me now, as opposed to when I'm outside, and a little bit different when I'm outside and don't have access to some of this stuff. So, what's going on today? What's going on yesterday? I see the market reversing after a couple of rough weeks, which I think is awesome. I also heard that Ukraine and Russia seem to be coming to some sort of potential ceasefire or agreement. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but it sounds like something's in the works, and maybe we see some peace out there, which would be awesome because war sucks. Nobody wants to see wars with any countries. Um, so it's nice to hear that maybe some things are going on in Ukraine, and maybe we'll get some relief over there. Hopefully, maybe the Middle East next, even though technically they are at a ceasefire. I don't think that things have really settled down quite that much. But unfortunately, out there, I think things may go on forever. So, hope everybody's Tuesday is great. And I know Monday we had a really good market. Today seems really good. If anybody's curious, I picked up a little bit of NVIDIA this morning. Um, I was happy to see it fall where it did. And when I looked at the valuation, NVIDIA, it was one of the ones I covered in my, highest conviction stocks going into 2026. So when I saw it down today, I saw that as a good opportunity to pick up a little. I've been using more cash secured puts and covered calls in my trading strategy, which is making me a lot more patient in my trading account. The set it and forget it one, I'm happy to go into some of the stocks that I have in there if anybody wants me to. The reality is, I don't pay much attention to that account. And what's cool about it, now, maybe I'll talk about that a little bit. So, what I've done for the most part is I set up different accounts for different goals. I have one that's primarily where I invest the majority of my investments, probably somewhere between 80, possibly even 90% of what I invest, and what I kind of refer to as a set it and forget it account. I buy the stocks that I think are the best of the best, and I kind of leave them alone. Now, I use today, literally with Google shooting up higher again, as an opportunity where I sold one call for a year out. But I don't even typically do that type of stuff because really it is a set it and forget it account. My goal with that account is go to sleep. And I hope I never touch that account. I hope that just becomes what my wife and my son inherit, which, not to be so morbid, but whenever I die, and God forbid that's a long ways away. But the reality is, I hope that's an account that just can continue to grow over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And I really don't make any changes unless something fundamentally changes with the company I own. I know I've told the story about McDonald's a bunch of times, so unless somebody hasn't heard it and kind of chimes in the chat, I'm not going to go into it again. But the history of what happened when I was a kid with being a gift and McDonald's is really where my mentality is with that set it and forget it account, which is, time in the market is more important than timing the market. And if I own a bunch of great companies over the next 30 years, I'm guessing that account does pretty well. Then I have a separate account where I do my trading, which is what I tend to talk about in the videos a good bit. And I don't always get into details of the trade, but it's more quote unquote exciting for me. So it's more fun to talk about, and it's where I pay attention to where things are moving, what's going on, and how they're behaving. And that account I kind of watch daily, and I like to see the price action of the different stock tickers. Um, so I keep an eye on it all the time. But even that one, I've gotten way more patient by using options. Canagra has been the primary one that has kind of pushed me into that position because what I've watched happen is I've been trading Canagra, which who the hell trades Canagra, right? I mean, how stupid is that? The stock barely goes anywhere. But what I've noticed is even with the volatility where it is and the stock that barely goes anywhere, Well, I apologize. I think I'm back. I think. Uh-oh. Oh yeah, it's back. I apologize about that. Whenever a call comes through and I use the phone to do the live, so it can mess it up. But either way, who would have thought that trading Canagra of all stocks would be A, what would make me more patient, and B, let me see that trading options on some really boring companies is pretty cool in some ways. Like Conagra barely moves, it doesn't really go anywhere, which we all know. But meanwhile, somehow I'm able to generate a return trading the short term options on it. And I sell both calls and puts. And what I like about Conagra is, at least the past 3 months or so, it doesn't really move enough for me to get nervous or have issues or start to stress about the trades. And if I'm able to make 15 cents per month, and I'm happy to do the math again. If anybody wants me to comment or talk about any of the portfolios, I'm happy to. But if I make 15 cents a month, which is almost like a joke, right? Who cares about 15 cents a month? But based on Conagra's stock price, that's a 9% yield just on the options. You then add to that that it pays a 7 or 8% dividend. And if I can sell a call, a put, and hold some stock, I'm actually generating over 20% return trading a stock like Conagra, which doesn't make me nervous. And I built up a little bit of a position in it, and it has actually helped me in my trading account to be more patient about letting options expire and just having the positions on. The reason for that is one of the negatives and the positives in Conagra is the options only trade in nickel wide, which is so stupid. Like I can go back to our floor trading days and the rules and the laws that they used to implement on the professionals, that when it transitioned and now the banks are in charge of it, that they are allowed to totally ignore those laws and do whatever they want and make the markets as wide as they like. It is so stupid. Anyway, Conagra's a nickel wide, so if I'm trading an option up for Conagra and I'm only getting 15 cents, even the day of expiration, it's not like it's a penny offer, it's a nickel offer. And God forbid I actually want to get out of that option. I'm not about to put a market order in. I'm not about to call E Trade to make the trade. So I've just gotten much better about letting the options expire, which has made me a lot better and more patient about that in other stocks as well. So back to Conagra, if I can make that 9%, I can sell if I buy 200 shares, because I always like to be long, sell a call, sell a put, pick 9% up on both the call and the put, and get that dividend as long as I pay attention to the ex dividend date. The amazing thing is I'm generating well over 20% returns trading Conagra, boring old Conagra. So that had me start looking at like Pfizer and Bristol Myers and Verizon and all sorts of like stupidly boring stocks that don't really go anywhere. And on different levels, it works out really well. And at least for me, who doesn't like the ups and downs that I was having with HIMS, which I still have the trade on, just for full disclosure, so people understand. The ups and downs are a little too dramatic, which makes it harder. But on those big old boring ones that don't really go anywhere, it's kind of cool that you can also generate a good income. So that's what I've been doing in Conagra in my trading account. So we have the set it and forget it, we have a trading account, and then I also have like one that I put a tiny amount in, that it's invested in really volatile stocks that I think will go wherever, that I don't watch because it's little enough money that maybe I get lucky and hit a home run. And then I also still have the trading account with my son Jacob, that I know we haven't done follow up videos, but he hasn't really shown an interest. So I don't want to force him and keep pushing him if it's not something that he's into or wants to do. I'm totally cool. Like I've made him and my wife memorize VOO and QQQM, because for anybody who's not interested in paying attention to individual companies, I see those as great avenues to be invested in the market, not have to pay such a close attention, and still be invested. Now, let me do my little disclaimer because my understanding is YouTube has been kind of giving some of the financial guys a hard time, and I want to make sure that there's no issues. So, as always, nothing in these videos or the lives, it is not financial advice. Please do not listen to me. I am not a financial advisor. You need to reach out to your own financial advisor and do your own research for making financial decisions. So, I think those are great ways to be invested in the overall market. And my ultimate goal when I started this channel is to get people to, kind of put away, save for the future, and not be so scared of investing. The professionals use big terms and big words that people aren't always so comfortable with, and it's a little bit intimidating. And then on top of it, for one, markets tend to go against you for a little bit of time, and nobody wants to put $500 into something and watch it drop to $400 as something that they're trying out when people are convincing them to invest and save for the future, right? I mean, nobody likes losing. And since markets go up and down and it's really tough to time it so well that you just invest immediately and it works perfectly, you have to account that it could drop in value. But the goal is, if you put it into your Chase account, you're probably making no interest. If you're smart enough or you not understand some of this or you've taken some time to learn, maybe you buy a CD or a high yield savings account that does a little bit better. But if you're making more than you're living on and you're able to consistently put away, the hope with the stock market is that you do better than being in your savings account or a CD or something similar to cash over the long run. So, my real hope is that people get a little bit more comfortable with investing and saving, and they don't get super intimidated with the stock market or advisors. And if they're able to use ETFs, to use a fancy word, and I'll explain it, which is exchange traded fund, to be able to put into the market and potentially save the money and the headache of chatting with an advisor, it's a way to be invested in something that should have better returns than leaving your money in cash. Because the problem with cash is it's a depreciating asset. We've all learned that the past few years. That with inflation and all the negative things that are going on and people struggling and recognizing that the price of whether it's eggs or a car or whatever it is continue to go up, that's no different than the value of your dollar decreasing. Hopefully, people get that. Like if I have $20, when I was a kid, you could go out to lunch. It cost $5 to buy lunch. Now it's hard to do it for 20. And what's interesting is we almost had no inflation for a really long time, and then COVID came out around, and we had crazy inflation, and then it kind of settled down a bit, and now we have what I would call normal inflation, similar to what I'm used to as growing up. Well, again, no different than your dollar depreciating. So if you are earning enough that you're able to pay your bills and you have a little bit left over, you want to make those dollars work the best as possible so they don't continue to lose value. And if being in the stock market or having some investments are the way to keep up or potentially beat inflation, I hope to encourage people to save so that when they get older, maybe they can use some of that to help offset Social Security or if they have pensions or whatever else and put themselves in a better position to be comfortable to live out their older days. Because I can tell you, like, I'm not in the best shape to begin with, but your knees hurt, your back hurts, like life just becomes harder on your body. So the more that you're able to not have to rely on going out and hustling and working as hard and being able to allow your money to work for you too, and having a little bit of that comfort of if I hit a bump in the road, it's there to protect me. I just hope that somehow it reaches some people who get better at being able to save. I get it. We all want to go out and we all want to have fun and do whatever else. So either way, we have crazy investment account, we have set it and forget it, we have the trading account, and then I also have a little bit of one in a dividend account. Now, in the long run, my goal is with the set it and forget it account, like I said, hopefully it gets passed on to my family. But slowly I'll transition into dividend payers, probably more than growth stuff, which is a little of why I sold that call in Google. Um, I thought the news today was kind of interesting. I don't know how many are aware or if anybody is, but basically what came out this morning is that it's a rumor that Meta might be buying chips from Google. It shot Google price up. Meta has been rebounding a bit, and it caused Nvidia and Oracle to fall, and possibly others. I didn't search around for everything. But I saw that as an opportunity to buy a little bit of Nvidia. I also used it to sell a call in Google because Google has run so far already that I thought maybe it's gotten a little overdone. And as much as when I heard the news, I found it interesting, in my head, and maybe I'm wrong, I didn't really feel like Google has come out with a competitive chip to NVIDIA. Again, maybe wrong. Google has incredible engineers, maybe they have. But my guess is that that Google can, like, Meta is buying additional chips from Google as well, and not now buying directly from Google. So I found it interesting, um, information, but I don't know that I think that means it's just like reason for the stocks to react the way they did. And it looks like JLS Cards also bought a little bit of Nvidia. And look, this is where I've been more patient, just to share a little bit of what I've done with some of this stuff. I bought a little bit of Nvidia today, but I also decided a price where I would want to add on, and I sold a cash secured put for about a month out. And if I get filled, great. Like, if it falls further, as opposed to, even though it's in my trading account, I would rather buy a little bit more. I think Nvidia is a good company. I picked a price target of 150 when I looked at a chart. I think it could test 140. And in the meantime, I was able to sell a put. I got 250 bucks. And if this is the dead low, I'll be able to keep that money. And if it goes down, I'll buy another 100 shares and potentially sell a 140 put or whatever at that time. So Conagra, Mr. Big and Boring, has helped me be more patient with things like that. Because honestly, it would have been, if it fell and started going through my put, I'd start, looking at it like a trade, and do I get out? Now it really is like, hey, I hope it gets there and I'll buy 100 shares. That's great. So, Mr. Somebody, for if anybody watches later and can't see the chat, forgive my hair's driving me nuts. I put the stuff in because I'm balding. Anyway, is asking what's my biggest position now. It has been for a long time Meta. I was fortunate enough back in 22 when Meta was collapsing and everybody was all pissed about he was investing in the metaverse, that I picked up a decent position around 120 bucks a share. And I had held most of it or all of it for a while, and then I sold about 30% in the 500s. That I kind of kicked myself in some ways, but it had grown to a much larger position than anything else in the portfolio. So I trimmed it down and spread it out among other things. The funny thing is when I did it, like, that was a set it and forget it account. My goal there is to leave stuff forever, and hope that I own something that, just blows up so much. So I have mixed feelings that I sold some of it because, what if Meta goes to 5,000 over the next 10 years? Like, I don't think it will, but I thought it was a good purchase, and there was no reason to make any changes. And that was kind of even why I say that about the call with Google. I think I sold a $480 call for a year out. And a little bit of my head thinks, well, if I get filled and I have to sell 100 shares, they're great, good trade. But I think Google and Amazon and Meta, and I have Starbucks in there and Chevron and some other companies that I think are great companies. Half of me also thinks, well, if it gets above there, why do I want to sell any? These are great companies that I really want to own for 10 or 20 years. Um, but I don't know. So yeah, my biggest position by a good bit is Meta. Um, I could take a look and see, just out of curiosity, to let people know. Just give me a minute to log in and whatever else. I'll tell you exactly the top few and whatever else. And I don't know if you're listening and you know what's your biggest position right now, and does anybody have me a stock you want me to kind of take a look at and look at the financials and give you some thoughts on it. So let's see. All right. Makes me do all, which I like, does all these verifications, and I use this total old fashioned. I, if I wanted to make trades, I couldn't anyway. So largest position is Meta, and then Google, which didn't used to be, but is now that it's moved up so much. And number three is Amazon, and then Chevron. But the only reason it's Chevron is I used to own both Exxon and Chevron, and I was able. I had losses that I was able to write off, and I had a really good gain on Exxon. So I sold Exxon and moved it into Chevron with this thought process that in time maybe I'll sell some of the Chevron and split it up again. Just never have because Chevron pays a little bit better of a dividend. Then Starbucks, Intuitive Surgical, but that's a neat one because similar to Meta, it was a small trade originally that has just done pretty well and moved up. Then Cisco, the not the food company, the technology company, Caterpillar, Boeing, Microsoft, NextEra Energy, Pfizer, and then so on. Palo Alto Networks, which I'm tempted to buy a little more of. I'm sure United Health, since JLS's card is asking, is in there too. I forget because it's in my retirement account so that I don't watch it. So let's take a look at the financials. I actually did something on them where I talked about them in my highest conviction stocks going into 2026 because I absolutely love United Health, and I was fortunate enough when the stock fell to pick up a decent position, and I still think it's just a great company to own. And I'll go over exactly why. Just let me pull up the page. Um, but one of the things I talk about pretty consistently is bad news, great companies. United Health is a great company, but if we go back, we had the CEO being shot, which started people not wanting to see the company do well, and it started selling off based on that. Obviously, they have a CEO change that begins, and I'll follow up with that as well. Then they had a rough quarter, so people are all too happy who already want them to see do poorly, and it sells off as the new CEO gets out of it, and another one comes in. More negative news. Another bad quarter, as well as the Department of Justice with the negative news, and the thing goes from, let me just take a quick look so I don't misquote. Let's see, a year high of, where does it show it? Oh, here it is. $622, and it fell all the way to 234 and change. That was a huge opportunity on a really good company because with all that negativity, and then I think we all know that the Department of Justice started investigating them, and but if you're big company and you're using United Healthcare for your employees, I don't think you're making any changes to those policies. I don't think you're making any big deals to change. Like you don't even. That's just news in the news. Like I don't think you're going and signing up with Cardinal Health because of this information. So their revenues are going to continue, their profits are going to continue over time. I mean, and all of a sudden you went from a company that was doing incredibly well that everybody wanted to own to, oh, it's so out of favor. Meanwhile, when I pull up the page that shows their revenues, it is just like up and to the right and this beautiful chart. I couldn't think of anything better, and their estimates going forward are really similar. So great company, bad news, great opportunity. You then add to it that insiders were buying, people who work for the government were buying. And then let's look at the fundamentals, and I'll flip through real quick to get to the first of all, it pays an okay dividend, and it used to be like negligible. But their earnings per share are over $19, which gives them a price to earnings of 16.64, which history, it was in like the mid to high 20s. So, deal of the century. Price to cash flow being 19.78. They have good return on assets, their gross margins and everything. It's healthcare, and this is the one place I'll defend them. Their net profit margin is only a little bit more than 4%, but it's still better than, if this is correct, 74% of its peers. So, as much as people bust on healthcare, it's not like they have these huge profit margins, but their revenue continues to grow. They continue to make more. And I think that was the deal of the century. And even around here, I still think it's a good deal. Anyway, let me get back to some of the other questions. What's my energy stock? So, the energy stocks that I have is Chevron, which I mentioned, and Nextera Energy for the most part. I will throw Oklo in there, but that was a political bet that I got lucky with. So when Trump got elected and nominated the guy who's the head of the Department of Energy, I kind of looked, and he was the CEO of Liberty Energy, and he was on the board of this Oklo that so was Sam Altman. So I threw in an amount of money that I'm not concerned about and got extremely lucky with it. The funny thing is I've sold out of 30% of it so that I've taken out my money. I have a profit in it and don't have any money invested. And as much as it is an energy stock, that company loses money and could be worthless. So I don't mean to include it in the others. And it's just that I think Chevron and Exxon are the best and really get midstream. That like they really cover a large portion of the oil and gas industry, but I do really like a lot of others than the ones I just own. Like as I plan to rotate, like if things didn't change, as I rotate from growth into dividends, I'd probably have like Hess Midstream, which is HESM, and MPLX, which is the what's the name? I can picture their logo in my head, but is it Conoco or one of the others, or Marathon? I think they're ones who deliver the oil to their stations. But I think there's a ton of good energy companies. I like they pay a nice dividend. I'm not super picky a lot of them because even though I go through so when I go through the fundamentals and I look at the numbers, I take it with like a grain of salt because unfortunately the accountants are phenomenal and they can hide anything they want from us. And there might be bad information. Like, look at what happened with Archer Daniels Midland not that long ago, which I think is a great company that you would think I'm guessing Anderson or one of the big accounting firms are the ones that watching them. But they had a scandal that somebody was making stuff up in the numbers. So it's very hard to rely on the information anyway. So I watch a lot of it as a trade more than I watch it in terms of doing a deep dive into the numbers. Because unfortunately, you can get buried in it. And I don't think it helps people as much as they think it helps. Now, it might make people feel more comfortable, but I'd rather look at fear and greed and buy a name that I just think is a good company that I expect to be around a long time then delve into the numbers and convince myself that because they're going to grow this much over these many years, that it should be this price. Because nobody can predict the future. And those estimates, like they're so. But that's my thought, and that's my answer on the energy stocks. So Saul Goodman. Oh, is that from the show? Are you aware the small hats are behind everything? Oh, okay, sounds good, Saul. No, I'm not, and I'll address it. If you think that a certain group of people can control the world and your life and everything else, well, I guess I feel pretty badly for you. So Although I guess it gives you somebody to blame that the things in your life might be lousy, to be able to say that was caused by this thing or that thing. But again, back to where my goal is to encourage people to save and invest and whatever else. I would encourage people to rely on themselves and kind of figure things out than think that somebody's pulling some strings and controlling whatever you think they're controlling. Am I hearing anything about a British company called ONT.L? No, it's not one I'm familiar with. I'm happy to pull up some Google and find some information, but it's not anyone I'm real familiar with. All right, and Mr. Somebody is asking about Fig. Let me take a look. I've heard of them. I don't have a real opinion, but I can look at the chart and the financials and stuff. New companies like that get on CNBC and kind of shoot up and shoot down. It reminds me of the internet bubble. Like maybe there's something. I don't know enough about Figma in particular, but I traded it as a trade simply because when it came out originally and was all over CNBC, I find that's like advertising that'll push a stock higher. But it doesn't give me an opinion of what I think of the company. And it's like I trade it for the day and that's about it, which I did. Um, but at least on here, they're losing money. Let me look at some of the fundamentals, which is why I just don't want to invest too much. Um, and because of that, it's not given a whole lot. Yeah, it doesn't give any return on it. It just kind of, and I don't know enough about that industry or what they do for me to. If I threw a few $100 at it because I think it's the next greatest thing, great, but it's not something I'm going to quote unquote invest in. Um, and then Dave is sharing that Google has become his biggest position too. Um, and that it was undervalued the last few quarters. Again, me too, because bad news, great companies. Like Google was having all that news that ChatGPT and everybody else was going to destroy their search engine while search was continuing to grow. And every quarter, the CEO kept addressing it, saying, look, not only is search continuing to grow, but we're working on Gemini, and there's no reason that the space can't have both. There's no reason that search can't continue to grow and people go to Google as well as ChatGPT, continuing to grow both segments. Yet all the news kept going on and on and on about how Google and their search engine was going to become obsolete because of AI. In the meantime, A, it wasn't become obsolete, it was continuing to grow. B, I have complete faith in the engineers at Google that they were going to figure some things out because really, one of the best. There's no reason for me to think that some new company is just going to blow them out of the water because the technology is that great, which is why I felt the same way that it was probably overdone. Now, it still made me nervous when it fell below 150, but it's amazing. I'm just curious, what was that? In March or something? That over 6 months it's like doubled since then, and all of a sudden now Gemini is better than ChatGPT, and they're going to put them out of business, and ChatGPT needs a backstop. Like it's just funny how finicky the industry is and how they've reversed. And honestly, Dave, like Google priced where it is now is a little bit of why I sold that call, because not only has it gone from a 15 PE to a 30 PE, what I noticed is that the options, like it's at a 40 vol, which it typically is like 15, 25 range. So seeing the vol shoot up on the options prices as well as the price of the stock, uh, if it wasn't in my set it and forget it, quite honestly, I probably would have sold calls to cover the entire position. But I sure don't want to wake up in a year and see the stock at 7 or 800 and I'm sold out at, I think it was 480 where I sold the calls. But it's grown in my account too. It was only my third or fourth position, but it really obviously shot up since the stock doubled. So it's cool. I'm glad that you've done well with it. And then to answer JS, I don't have a Discord or any of the others. I am going out of town for a few weeks. I leave on Thursday, but I have thought about looking into it and figuring some of that stuff out. Um, I do this stuff on the side for fun. I haven't really tried to drive it into a business, but I enjoy the doing it. You know, my wife doesn't like this stuff. I got one buddy who we talk about markets pretty much every day. I've actually thought of bringing him on because he's kind of fun and I like his personality. Like, we joke about Target because he friggin' hates Target, like, can't stand it. So when I talk about Target being good value, it's just one of those things that, anyway. But I've thought about doing a little bit more with it, but I've also questioned like what's my end goal. So I'm not sure. Um, it's possible I'll do some Discord or some of the other stuff. I'm just terrible with technology, so it takes me a lot to learn about some of it. But I thought it would be cool to kind of be able to post the account and what I'm invested in because I know some people are curious and I don't know how to show it without having information that I wouldn't want people to know. So not me, Bebe. Nice to meet you. What's up, bro? Just checking in on you and hope you're doing well and hope you're recovering from the surgery from the back shots. I'm not sure. I had no surgery, so I'm not sure. I'm assuming that's some sort of a joke. Um, yeah, so Dave looks like he's tempted to sell a call on Google as well. Yeah, it's why I did one. I'm not going to be. Fortunately, my position is big enough. If I sell 100 shares, I'm not going to kick myself, and it's not going to be a big deal. But I get it. I mean, I really do want to own Google for forever. Like, I'd want my family to inherit it. At least unless something fundamentally changes with Google. I think they're an incredible company. And quite honestly, my wife's cousin or her niece, her cousin, works there, and everything I see about the company, like, it just blows my mind away. You know, my son wants to be a lawyer. I've told him to talk to his cousin and see if Google needs lawyers. I mean, I didn't get to visit the campus. They limit how many people could go, but they went on the last visit. And my understanding is it's like that movie and then some. The intern, no, or whatever it was called with whoever they are. But that movie where they work for Google and everything, they've got bowling alleys and workout rooms and like everything you can imagine down to like doctors on campus and they have those sleep pods and you're able to get a massage every now and then. And I think they do that because people should enjoy their work. So it encourages them to be able to stay on the campus and get their work done and continue to thrive in the environment of like the cousin, like, she wants to do something good for the world. Like, she legitimately does. She's so less occupied with the income, and she does quite well for somebody her age and everything else. But her goal with working for Google is being in hopes of being part of something that becomes bigger and helps to improve people's life. So it's kind of cool the type of employee who I think they really attract and she thinks that they go overboard with some of that stuff, but I think that that's kind of what makes it a great company, and it attracts some really good people. Some of the others, like, of course, since she's in that world and lives out there, she has friends who work for Facebook and this one and that one. Some of the others, like, they beat the employees down to get as much out of them as possible, and I don't know that that's such a great work environment and they're going to get what they want out of their employees. But maybe they all do. I mean, maybe they pay enough that it really doesn't matter that somebody's going to work hard for all of them. But Google's like that movie. It's really amazing. And I think they're such a great company. Um, what I know I've talked about it before. What I like about Meta is I think people like to hate Mark Zuckerberg, and at least right now, to flip it, because as I've said, like, Google went from a 15p to a 30. Meta hit it out of the ballpark with their earnings. The street hated it for the same reason they hated it back in 22, which is they're annoyed by how much he's spending on his capital expenditures. But because of what happened to the stock back in 2022, I think he tried to address it at the meeting to you know, temper, is that the right word? But to kind of make that not as such a big deal, to kind of explain like, hey, either this works to continue to drive our earnings out of the ballpark because man, they grow at an unbelievable rate for a company the size that they are. But even if it doesn't continue to push the advertising and the AI and make it like incredible, thank you, Lily. The internship with Vince Vaughn. Yeah. I yes, that was the movie. But even if it doesn't grow the earnings the way that they hope, sorry, my eyesight. I gotta. It, they need the things that they're investing in anyway. So who cares? Meanwhile, the market sold it off. It drove the PE ratio down back to like 20, which, from my perspective, is a steal for Meta. If you can pick it up at 20 times earnings and is the size that they are and are just a friggin' cash cow who could also pull the reins in on the spending if they really needed to, uh, I think that's the best deal in the market right now. And really, United Health, I still love as well. To go back to that one, which is why I did the video a few days ago going into like my top picks going into 2026. Oh, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Sorry, we're getting really close to it. So I forgot and wanted to say that. I hope everybody has some fun family plans and doesn't pay attention to markets the way on the day off. You know, it's funny, the older I've gotten, not even when I was trading at the exchange, Monday is like my favorite day of the week. I know that sounds like I'm a total geek or whatever, but it was super fun back when I was trading because it's hard to explain what that environment was like. I mean, I compare it to being an athlete, but you're not. And the relationships and the fun and everything else of what life was like down there. I mean, all right, I'll tell one story because my wife said I should talk about the floor a bit because it's fun and it's engaging. So, first of all, I know it looks like total chaos. Like you look from the outside, you see all these people doing this and that and the other. And what I tell people is think of like football if you didn't know the rules, or baseball, or whatever sport you watch. It makes total sense once you understand the rules of the game and everything else. Like hands facing towards you, or when you're a buyer, hands away or a seller, prices are out here, quantity is touching your face. So, like if you're paying the equivalent to $2 for 5 contracts, you do the price out here. I'll pay two. It's facing towards me since I'm buying on 5 contracts. Thank you, Lily. Happy Thanksgiving. So the atmosphere is total like fraternity, sorority, friends, whatever else. But I always say because it used to be, it's intimidating to some people and they feel like, well, maybe it's sexist or racist, primarily because it's a lot of white men. But I think that's just how it ends up being because markets could care less who you are. The markets go where they are. They don't know if you're a man, a woman, a black, white, this, like, they don't care. And it's one of the things I love. Well, it's very competitive. So they don't want anybody in the pit. And one of the guys, Scott, used to harass me. And he would come up and he would hint that, you know, he has a crush on me and I was young and it was very uncomfortable. And he's doing that to kind of throw you off of your trades because the less people in the pit, the more trades for the guys who are down there. So if they can do things to annoy new people and get them to leave, that means they can make more money. Well, this went on for years. Now, it got to the point where it didn't bother me as much. Like I started to recognize he was just joking as much as like I said, I was young and stupid and like the guy's married, has kids. He's just being a douche. I don't know. He's just being a pain. So Anyway, like I'm talking with my buddy, trying to come up with an idea to get him to lay off as we're getting closer to April Fool's Day. So, my buddy's girlfriend at the time used to work at a law office. We had her write up on the law stationery that I was suing him over sexual harassment. On April 1st, she came up, and you can't like get onto the floor, but they have these loudspeakers. So she goes to the desk and pages Scott over the loudspeaker. Hey, Scott, please come to the front desk. You have a visitor here. He goes off the floor, and I know what's going on, and I'm totally embarrassed and nervous because I don't want to get caught and whatever else. He walks off the floor, and my understanding is she does it perfectly and says, "You've been served." And he comes back, he starts reading it and sees these papers that I'm suing him for sexual harassment. And it's all just a joke. But these are the type of things that we used to do at work. I mean, work was so much fun. And then when computers came around and like chased it away, it was very hard to transition like into normal life. So it was like a phenomenal thing and a great thing all at the same time. Because here I was really young, making lots of money really easily, just trading markets and getting in and out of things, to then go and try to get a job. And we got to goof around. I mean, people, I know clerks who would call their traders saying they made a error on a trade and it was going against them and they're going to double up and freaking the guy out who's coming in late. There were All right, here's one that was gross but funny. So this guy, somebody kept stealing his lunch. They had these employee break rooms that all the traders and clerks and everybody could use. And every day, like his wife would make him his lunch, he'd have a bag, he'd put it in the refrigerator, and it kept being stolen from him consistently. So eventually, he just put like gross, disgusting stuff on his sandwich and left it in the whatever. Anyway, I miss those days. The floor was a lot of fun. I think it's why I still have a trading account and I still keep in touch with some of the buddies. And then Chicago is super fun. Now, I don't think I could live in the cold anymore, and I really like living in Las Vegas. But either way, yeah, that stuff was cool, and it's why I still pay attention to this stuff. But it's interesting. I mean, I traded currency futures, not the S&P futures. So I traded at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. My brother was at the options exchange, and he was trading stock options. And the way that works is you have like 5 or 6 in your pit, one main one, and then the others. Well, I traded currency futures, and downstairs was where the S&P, and then later around when they opened up Nasdaq futures, that started trading. And I think the best thing that happened for me was trading the yen because I had no understanding of it. And I say that because I could just react to what was going on in the markets and trade the flow. Whereas with stocks, I always think they're going higher, even to this day. Like I'm the equivalent of Tom Lee because I've been watching them for 40 years. And even when they have big corrections, like I'm just bullish. Like that's just an opportunity to buy it because it's discounted for a while. Eventually the companies, if you own good companies, like they make money, and the reality is the values are based on the earnings. So if you own company X, whatever it is, and they do a decent job, and 20 years later, even if they've just gone up with inflation, odds are you've done better. So if there's some terrible thing that happens in the world, like when COVID happened and the market collapses, like that's just opportunity to pick up stocks at a cheap value. So I worry that if I had gone and traded the S&Ps, I would have been so jaded in that stocks always go higher that I wouldn't have traded the order flow well and been able to, like the few times I went down there, I would always buy it. And if it happened to be a down day, I would just get crushed. By trading the currency futures and I didn't understand them, I really just reacted to where the markets were going, and it was a little bit easier. But maybe I never gave the S&Ps a long enough time because what's hard to transition to onto computer screens versus the floor, the real advantage of being at the exchange and being able to trade is knowing who is who. So at least in the currency pit, and maybe S&P futures worked the same way. Maybe once you knew who worked for the banks, it was similar. But I knew who worked, like Bryce worked for JP Morgan, not Morgan Stanley. Well, we are the yen against the dollar, and the dollar yen trades in New York over banks and whatever else. And we move the inverse, but their market really moves us. Well, there are guys like Bryce and Mike and Billy and Killer who are on direct headsets or have a clerk with the guys in New York who are trading the dollar yen. Well, if they start buying our market, that means the other one's selling off, and all you have to do is kind of jump on board and copy them. You don't really have to know what's going on. But if all the bank traders are now wanting to buy the market, you just kind of jump on and you buy it too. So if they're like 2 bid, you're like 3 bid. And it becomes really easy once you start to know who's who in the pit. When you transition to a computer, you don't see any of that. And then you add to it that you can feel the energy on the floor, like you know when people are stuck in the same position and they're trying to sell, even if they're bidding and things like that, that you just on a computer screen, it's just numbers. So I tend to own good companies and stick with them. Anyway, whole bunch of nothing. Oh, I just saw gold go across the screen. I got to tell you, sorry, something that popped in my mind that I kind of think gold's going to continue higher. And I hate to admit it because I had some and I still have a little, but I wish I kept all of it because I was listening to Peter Schiff, who, forgive me, I can't stand, but I still think he's very entertaining and great at what he does. And the reason I can't stand him is I can't stand the self promoters. Like he runs a gold fund. Oh, I'll have to take a look. Wheat candle. I didn't see. I assume. Well, let me take a look since you said it. That UNH had a good pop today. Oh, look at that. Oh, wow, up $8. That's cool. Um, but so he runs a gold fund and a silver fund, and he's constantly selling how great an investment it is and how it's beaten this and that. And to be fair, it has, but it also did terrible for 20 years too. It made a high in the late 70s of $800 before over the next 20 years it died and nobody cared about gold and it fell below 300 before it started to catch itself. But he goes on and on about gold being the greatest thing, and he would chime about not understanding Bitcoin and how stupid Bitcoin is. And I've talked about Bitcoin. I am a Bitcoin believer, but I also could see how it could go to zero or a million. So he starts talking about now, if they had a gold crypto, now that would make sense because Bitcoin's just stupid. And I would chime in the comments from now and then being like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because if you make a gold crypto that's based on the price of gold and it just flounders around, that's no different than Bitcoin either. Like it has no basis. That was a few years ago. Recently, and I'll read it in a second, Wheat, and I'll answer it. He talked about not just starting a gold crypto, but backing it by gold. Now, he has a lot of followers on his channel, and this is where I realize he's a smart guy as much as I can't stand him. If he backs it by gold and creates a gold crypto, that is going to create more buyers to be able to come to the market. It also allows for people to break it down into whatever small amount they wanted. So if you wanted to buy a pack of gum for 70 cents, maybe a pack of gum costs $5 now. Like I said, I'm old, inflation, whatever else. You could break it down like that as opposed to having a piece of gold and trying to break off little pieces and give it to people. But I think what he's really going to end up doing is driving a whole lot of new buyers who want to have crypto, who believe in gold, who can now have it as a store of value on a whatever, and it's digital gold. And if he's backing it by gold, it's a way for him to have to buy more gold to drive the price off, or potentially put his stockpile in there to be able to sell to the new buyers. So I think if he's got another year or 2 years where he can continue to promote it, I do think it could push the price of gold and silver higher. The one thing I kind of wonder, and if any of you have an opinion, I'd be curious too, if they created a gold and a silver and a copper and a platinum crypto that are all backed by those metals, does silver become just like a total nut? Like, if you could break it down to any piece, is there any reason to still own silver? I've been picking up, like, I like to collect all of it. So I try to have a little of this and a little of that. And I find markets super interesting. But if you had cryptos on all of it, is second place just like dead? Nobody cares. Like, why would you have it? Because gold can be broken down into pennies too. So having silver, which is less expensive and easier to transact in, is there no need for one that's easier to transact anyway? That's how my brain just runs and runs and runs. But I do think that gold has some opportunities still, because I do think by the time he creates the crypto gold. And then I'm going to answer Wheat Candle's question. I see it's been about an hour, so if others have questions, by all means, while I ramble about, because I ramble, as you all know. But as I answer his question, feel free to put in whatever you want, and I'll answer questions, and then probably go and say hi to my wife. My opinion on oil. It seems really undervalued to me. It's out of fate. Like, they're not. Government makes really good trades in oil. They sold it when it was up above $100 a barrel. I think around 120. It has gone lower and lower and lower, and now they're talking about economy slowdown and OPEC produced too much, driving the price down. I think maybe a little early, so I think a small position is just fine, but we're not getting away from it, even as they do the nuclear and try to get to the wind power and everything else. Like, it's not going away anytime soon. It's not like we're gonna power ships that go across the ocean and move transport, like, or the trucks or anything else anytime soon. And even if we go electric for vehicles, I don't think the infrastructure is there yet. So it would just create too much of a demand. So I think oil still has a need. Now, it would be great in 40 or 50 years if we could kind of get away from it, but yeah, it seems cheap to me too. Maybe it gets cheaper, and I'll still date back to the late '90s. I remember an article in the paper when oil got really low, and they did a whole article on the value of a barrel of oil versus like a barrel of water versus a barrel of suntan lotion versus so on and so on and so on. And I kind of keep waiting for an article like that to come out, because that was the dead low or something that compares it to things like that. But it seems like it's gotten relatively inexpensive. I don't know how low it'll get, but it's interesting to me as well. So I hope it works out, Wheat Candle. I think you're on the right side. Again, not financial advice. It's just my thoughts on it. Um, but I like oil here. I'm just not. It isn't something that I would just be diving into, because I haven't kept close enough eye and not sure on it. But it seems cheap. Um, that's all. So anyway, hopefully and then the little point on that disclaimer about be cautious. I saw something the other day that was talking about, and this has nothing to do with finance, about some of the people who talk about health and what to eat and whatever else, and recognizing that they're also being paid by some of the big corporations that put out a lot of the stuff that maybe you shouldn't be eating, and talking about how social media doesn't have a whole lot of guidelines on it, where they can get around laws that they can't on TV and whatever else. Be really careful about who you watch and what you hear and what they tell you. I mean, I see these finance people promising 80% returns a year, or the ones pushing this or that, and then they're selling their, just sign up for my courses and my this and my that. I think everybody who watches the finance stuff is pretty, but I also see people falling for it, or at least in the comment section saying how I made it to your class. It was so unbelievable. And maybe it's true, maybe it isn't, but really do your own research, decide what makes sense, and be really careful about the people you're following and the advice they give, whether that's finance or food and health. Like, I'm one to talk, so don't listen to me. I'm the biggest idiot there is on YouTube. Like, here I am, a guy who doesn't take my health the way I should, talking about that stuff. But seriously, like, I do this stuff because I want to see people invest. I worry about people. It's just my nature. So same with anybody you're following. Be really cautious, especially with the AI stuff, that the information's actually accurate, honest, and good information. Because even if they're saying eat this thing, it might be the company kind of pushing it and getting around some of the rules. Anyway, have a great Tuesday. I don't know how good I'll be about lives over the next 3 weeks and some of the updates. I will try, but we leave for China on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, and the time difference and everything else. We'll see how it goes. So have a great day. Have a great Thanksgiving. And I'm sure I'll talk to you again before I leave. No problem. Glad you like it. And I will think about the Discord. Like I said, I'm kind of an idiot when it comes to this stuff. I started to look once before, but I'll see if I can figure it out because at least so far I like doing this stuff. Bye, guys. Have a good day.